Making headlines for this week of October 31st. Harper's shame. Canadian Prime Minister apologizes to cabinet members after hiding in a closet during shooting. Playtime is over. Putin addresses general public, calling out the global cabal and their game, pushing the button of disclosure. Russia's World Cup 2018 logo speaks volumes, and it is more than just a sporting event. And cleared for takeoff. Futuristic aero car from Slovakia, moving towards plans for mass production after unveiling in Austria.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. There is a saying, and when traveling on the seas, it is a code of honor, that the captain goes down with his or her ship. Loosely applied, one may also expect a similar code of conduct from the leader of a country. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC.ca website, reported on October 29th that Prime Minister Stephen Harper told his hushed caucus Wednesday morning he felt remorse for surreptitiously ducking into a closet during last week's assault on Parliament Hill. Yes, that's right. A global leader abandoned others around his team and disappeared to hide in a closet during the time the alleged act of terrorism took place. The article goes on to say that none of those MPs were critical of Harper when reached Wednesday for comment, and all of them said the Prime Minister didn't owe them an explanation. He's the leader of the country and he was the obvious target, said one Conservative MP. He didn't need to tell us why he got out of there. It appears that there is some disagreement among the leaders of the three main political parties as to how to describe this shooting event. Harper was immediately calling it terrorism. The leader of the New Democratic Party and the official opposition, Tom Mulcair, was quoted in the CBC article as saying that, "I don't think we have enough evidence yet to use that word," he said. "When you look at the history of the individual involved, you see a criminal act, of course. You see something that was meant to provoke the type of reaction that we had. But when you look at the history of the individual, attempts to get help, even to be in prison to get help, if that turns out to be the case, I think that we're not in the presence of a terrorist act in the sense that we would understand it. And I think that we have to be very careful about the use of the word terrorism and make sure that's actually what we're dealing with. Frankly, the information that is now available to the public comforts me in my choice not to use the word terrorism in describing this act," Mulcair said. If we approach this story from a perspective that assumes, for a moment, a global banking cabal that is trying to maintain its control and domination in the world, the fact that a global leader like Harper quickly disappearing to hide in a closet may suggest one of two things. One is that he was perhaps expecting something else to happen, and that more people should have died in the event, and he is now appearing with egg on his face for hiding like a coward. The other possibility was that Harper knows the global cabal is being closed in on, and he hid just out of plain fear to protect himself from being arrested. Somehow, hiding in a closet, however, does not seem to support this second possibility. Regardless of the reason, a leader left his post and left his team. Harper's cabinet members defend him, saying that he is the obvious target. How could they possibly know or even assume that? RT.com reported on October 27th that former U.S. presidential candidate Ron Paul has commented on the events in Ottawa. The article writes that Canada is quickly becoming an aggressive nation, former U.S. Congressman Ron Paul warns in a recent dispatch, and will risk significant blowback if it continues to intervene in matters overseas. Paul was quoted as saying that how the world has changed, Canada's wise caution about military adventurism, even at the height of the Cold War, has given way to a Canada of the 21st century literally joined at Washington's hip and eager to participate in any bombing mission initiated by the DC interventionists. Considering Canada's peaceful past, the interventionist Canada that has emerged at the end of the Cold War is a genuine disappointment. More evidence seems to be coming out suggesting the false flag nature of the shooting in Canada's capital city on the 22nd. Photographs submitted to the Max Resistance website by an anonymous witness claiming to work as a parliamentary assistant looking out from a window captured large numbers of police vehicles located near the Parliament buildings, allegedly 15 minutes before the shooting took place. The witness claims that the higher-than-normal police presence was suspicious. Assuming the photos were truly taken at the time indicated, there is no way a shooter could have made his way into the Parliament buildings on that day. Another red flag of suspicion comes from this CBC.ca report. CBC anchor Peter Mansbridge asks senior correspondent Adrian Arsenault about preparations being made by Canadian security agencies.
Adrian, you've been looking at this whole issue of radicalization in depth over the last year or so. You've dealt a lot with security officials, and you know how they have been preparing for these kind of situations. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I can tell you that they may have been surprised by the actual incidents, but not by the concept of them. Within the last month, we know that CSIS, the RCMP, the National Security Task Force, all engaged in, I suppose, they ran a scenario that's akin to a war games exercise, if you will, where they actually imagined, literally, an attack in Quebec, followed by an attack in another city, followed by a tip that, hey, some guys are coming back, some foreign fighters are coming back from Syria. So they were imagining a worst-case scenario. We're seeing elements of that happening right now, but they were trying to figure out, in the event of that worst-case scenario, how do we maintain the integrity of the investigation? Who's in charge? You know, who calls the shots? Who does what? Who calls whom? So that is what they were trying to do. So this, people may talk today in terms of being surprised, but we know this precise scenario has been keeping them up at night for a while.
Brandon Martinez, writing for the globalresearch.ca website on October 24th, notes that what an amazing coincidence that Canadian intelligence ran a drill envisioning an attack first in Quebec, then another city. On Monday, October 20th, a man identified as Martin Rouleau supposedly ran over 2 Canadian soldiers with his car in a mall parking lot in the city of Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu in Quebec. And yesterday, as we know, one soldier was gunned down in Ottawa, followed by a siege on Parliament itself. Authorities and media are claiming that both suspects were converts to Islam and who had become, quote-unquote, radicalized. What are the chances that these mock terror drills are just a coincidence? In nearly every instance of a major terrorist occurrence in the West, it has been revealed that intelligence services were conducting war games exercises mimicking the very events that later came to pass. In another article posted on the whatsupic.com website on October 30th by Mark Taliano, he writes that the Canadian government wants to spread unreasonable fear of radical, violent Muslim terrorists so that it can better control all Canadians, especially those who choose to exercise their constitutionally enshrined rights. The government is also advancing a population control mechanism so that it can deny and negate domestic constitutional rights. In particular, Section 35 of the Constitution Act of 1982, which recognizes and affirms Aboriginal and treaty rights. There may also be evidence to suggest that Zehaf Bibo, the shooter, was set up by a handler or a manager. Taliano adds that the notion that Zehaf Bibo was being exploited or set up by a handler, manager, or police informer is further reinforced by observations of investigative reporter Amy McPherson, who credibly claims in Government Envisages Anti-Constitutional Surveillance Law during Ottawa shooting that U.S. authorities had advance information. She wonders how American intelligence knew the name of a possible terrorist as the mayhem was still unfolding. How did Americans know when Canadians didn't? And how was this information so widespread that American media and Google had access to distribute, but domestic reporters on the scene did not? The theory that U.S. agencies were somehow implicated in the tragedy is further reinforced by the fact that Operation Determined Dragon, a joint U.S.-Canada counterterrorism drill, was executed from 20 to 29 October on 2014, so the murder of Corporal Nathan Cirillo coincided with the time that Determined Dragon was being executed. Yet, the Canadian government frames this tragedy as rooted in Islamic terrorism rather than the more credible alternative, that a homeless drug addict was used as a tool to further an already finalized agenda to wage illegal war and to restrict the rights and freedoms of all Canadians. Not surprisingly, the passing of the anti-constitutional surveillance law, Bill C-13, is being expedited. While we may never get all the answers, it is unfortunate that this tragedy is being exploited to advance illegal war and police state agendas, according to Taliano. On October 24th, Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke to the Valdai conference being held in Sochi. A summary of the address and a transcript of the address was posted on the 2012 The Big Picture blog site on October 31st. The website writes that most people in the English-speaking parts of the world missed Putin's speech at the Valdai conference in Sochi a few days ago, and chances are those of you who have heard the speech didn't get a chance to read it and missed its importance. Western media did their best to ignore it or to twist its meaning. Regardless of what you think or don't think of Putin, this is probably the most important political speech since Churchill's Iron Curtain speech of March 5, 1946. The article notes how things have been done historically in terms of global diplomacy and negotiations. The article writes that Putin abruptly changed the rules of the game. Previously, the game of international politics was played as follows. Politicians made public pronouncements for the sake of maintaining a pleasant fiction of national sovereignty, but they were strictly for show and had nothing to do with the substance of international politics. In the meantime, they engaged in secret backroom negotiations in which the actual deals were hammered out. Previously, Putin tried to play this game expecting only that Russia be treated as an equal, but these hopes have been dashed, and at this conference he declared the game to be over, explicitly violating Western taboo by speaking directly to the people over the heads of elite clans and political leaders. The article contains about 10 summary points of the address, which are too long to go into full detail in this newscast. A few key points, however, are these. Russia will no longer play games and engage in backroom negotiations over trifles. All systems of global collective security now lie in ruins. The builders of the New World Order have failed. Russia has no intention of going fishing in murky waters created by America's ever-expanding empire of chaos and has no interest in building a new empire of her own. Russia will not attempt to reformat the world in her own image, but neither will she allow anyone to reformat her in their image. Russia will not close herself off from the world, but anyone who tries to close her off from the world will be sure to reap a whirlwind. Russia does not wish for the chaos to spread, does not want war, and has no intention of starting one. In her external, and even more so, internal politics, Russia's power will rely not on the elites and their backroom dealing, but on the will of the people. There is still a chance to construct a new world order that will avoid a world war. This new world order must, of necessity, include the United States, but can only do so on the same terms as everyone else, subject to international law and international agreements, refraining from all unilateral action in full respect of the sovereignty of other nations. Putin and Russia appear to have finally had enough of the playtime with the global cabal, and they are content to sit back and watch the global cabal implode with all the truth and revelations coming out at this time. The people of the world are bringing down the global cabal, and Russia doesn't need to do anything as far as this is concerned. The full list of summary points, including the text of the speech, will appear in a link in the show's summary. Several weeks ago, during the inauguration of the new Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven, the leader had announced that Sweden recognizes the Palestinian state. At that time, it seems that he spoke a little ahead of himself because sources later reported that he could not make comments like that without at least the support of the National Parliament. That issue appears to have now been resolved. RT.com has reported on October 30th that Sweden has recognized the occupied state of Palestine officially, according to its foreign ministry. The Scandinavian country has become the first Western European EU state to recognize the territories. Israel is not pleased. The news follows an earlier hint by Le Pen in his Social Democratic Manifesto during his inaugural address in October, and that this would happen. The idea was quickly met with criticism from the United States and Israel. Swedish Foreign Minister Margot Wallström was quoted as saying that our decision comes at a critical time because over the last year we have seen how the peace talks have stalled, how decisions over new settlements on occupied Palestinian land have complicated a two-state solution, and how violence has returned to Gaza. By making our decision, we want to bring a new dynamic to the stalled peace process. In the Swedish newspaper Dagens Nyheter, Wallström had written comments stating that today's recognition is a contribution to a better future for a region that has far too long been characterized by frozen negotiations, destruction, and frustration. Some will state this decision comes too soon. I'm afraid rather that it is too late. RT reported Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas as welcoming the historic move by Sweden. The response from the Israeli side was, to no surprise, very critical. RT.com quoted Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman as saying that the decision of the Swedish government to recognize a Palestinian state is a deplorable decision which only strengthens extremist elements and Palestinian rejectionism. Wallström feels that this recognition will give Palestine a more equal position with Israel, since peace discussions involving these two countries have failed significantly more often than they have succeeded. A question might be asked if peace negotiations have ever really succeeded at all. Given the current situation, it would appear not. Wallström also said that EU members confirmed in 2009 their readiness to recognize the state of Palestine when it was appropriate. We are now ready to take the lead. We hope this can show the way for others. Back in 2012, a UN General Assembly vote resulted in a de facto recognition of a Palestinian state, although RT reports that a yes vote from most EU members is still pending. In a separate article from the Swedish paper Aftonbladet, but reported via RT.com earlier in October, Wallström hit back at allegations of influence on Swedish foreign policy by the US. Wallström had been quoted as saying that it's not the US that decides our policies. However, Stockholm will continue the constructive dialogue with the US to explain our motives and reasons for this. In yet another development to this story, Howard Koplowitz of the International Business Times reported on October 30th that Israel recalled its ambassador to Sweden on Thursday after the Swedish government officially recognized a Palestinian state. Prime Minister Stefan Löfven made recognizing Palestine one of his campaign promises. And the Swedish Foreign Ministry tweeted on Thursday that it expressed hopes for peaceful coexistence between Israel and Palestine. Although not recognized as an official source of information, a Wikipedia.org webpage on the international recognition of the State of Palestine, the page states that on November 29, 2012, the UN General Assembly passed a motion changing Palestine's entity status to non-member observer status by a vote of 138 to 9 with 41 abstentions. As of September 27, 2013, approximately 70% of the 193 member states of the United Nations have recognized the State of Palestine. Many of the countries that do not recognize the State of Palestine nevertheless recognize the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people. In financial news, according to an RT article on October 30th, it has been reported that finance ministers from over 51 countries signed an agreement in a step closer to ending the dark financial underworld of tax evasion and money laundering. Another 30 countries pledged to join by 2018. The deal is called the Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement and will look to build a collective exchange of bank accounts, taxes, assets, and income held outside local tax jurisdictions. RT has this report.
Bank secrecy is dead, and that's the word from the outgoing EU tax commissioner. He was speaking after 50 countries signed up to a banking agreement aimed at fighting tax evasion and fraud. Right now, a person can open a bank account abroad and bypass the tax authorities in their home country. But from September 2017, countries that signed up to the agreement will automatically share this kind of information. Almost 6 trillion euros are thought to be stashed away in tax havens around the world, depriving governments of approximately 130 billion euros a year in taxes. But former trader Brian Bagdasarian thinks it's corporations and not individuals that should be targeted.
When you look at what they're going after, the fact that, for instance, a U.S. citizen has to declare anything over $50,000 held outside the U.S. At the same time, Google paid 1/16 of 1% on $37 billion last year in taxes. It doesn't seem to make sense. Who's committing the fraud at this point? Is it the fact that the one person who happened to go and he have money outside the country is doing it, or is it the large corporation? Anybody that's sophisticated is not keeping the money in their own name, and that's where the big difference has come now. Within Switzerland and asset management in general, anonymity has moved outside of the bank, and it's happening before the funds ever reach that level.
Bagdasarian is correct in that historically it has always been individuals who have been targeted while corporations have been able to slide through the legal loopholes to keep their profits. So this story could be seen as potentially positive, assuming that corporations are fairly targeted as individuals have been. It could be seen as potentially negative if the same corrupt corporations are merely able to hide their identities and continue their activities while individuals get hit even harder. There may be a third possibility that is unrelated to either, and that may be that this announced agreement is merely for the public show, to hide the fact that global finance ministers needed a legitimate reason to meet to discuss the true financial shifts that are taking place behind the scenes. So as one learns to use discernment, one may find it easier to start seeing that what is going on in the background by observing what is or is not being reported to the general public. Once again, a good practice is to never take any story, even the stories reported on Cosmic Vision News. Do not simply accept them as truth, unless you know that you resonate with the information and choose to allow it to become a part of your truth in the current moment of now. Learn to play the role of the skeptic and practice asking the hard questions every time something happens, even if you know that there may be no truth to them. The idea is to teach yourself not only critical thinking, but also critical question asking. And this will help one to build the knowledge and confidence in asking those questions that can only help in the coming moments of now. In Spain, Euronews has reported on October 27th that dozens have been arrested in huge anti-corruption raids that have taken place in that country. Euronews has this story.
Over 50 people have been arrested, including prominent local political figures in Spain's mainstream parties in what's being dubbed the country's biggest ever crackdown on corruption. Investigators are interested in local government construction contracts worth some 250 million euros, amid claims that bribes and kickbacks were paid. The highest profile detainee here on the left is Francisco Granados, an ex-deputy president of the Madrid region for the ruling Conservative Popular Party. Also formerly a senator, he stood down in February after newspaper reports claiming he had €1.5 million in a Swiss bank account. Reacting to the claims of corruption that sparked raids in the capital as well as Murcia, Leon and Valencia, Spain's parliamentary speaker said, "I deeply regret it. These things are not good, but I insist. Justice is slow but relentless, and in the end, everything comes to light, and that's good for everyone." Politicians, bankers and even royals in Spain have been caught up in the country's bid to clean up public life. After the sky-high unemployment rate, corruption's become Spaniards' second biggest concern.
Earlier this year, Euronews had reported that not even the royal family was immune to corruption prosecution when it reported that Princess Christina and her husband had been charged with tax evasion and that the royal family member may have to stand trial. Information at this time appears limited, however, as to whether or not this trial actually took place. In general news, coming up in early November as various elections take place around the U.S., 2 states in particular are addressing one very key issue, and the states are also facing a massive advertising campaign to prevent this issue from becoming known. An article on the Minds.com website on October 22nd writes that the ballots are out and voting has begun. Monsanto is panicking, and so are their biotech and GMO manufacturing friends. So much so that they just dropped a staggering $2.5 million in addition to what they've already spent to defeat GMO labeling in Oregon, bringing the total to $4.5 million in just one state. They also dropped another cool $1 million in Colorado, bringing the total to about $5 million in that state, all to keep voters from checking that yes, label GMOs box at the voting booths on their ballots. What exactly are these companies trying to hide from U.S. consumers? Monsanto isn't the only one spending money left and right trying to defeat GMO labeling. PepsiCo has added another $1.4 million in Oregon to try to defeat GMO labeling, and $1.65 million in Colorado. Other food manufacturing companies have put in their own small change to try to defeat this initiative as well. But we are down to the wire now, and the makers of genetically modified crops are pulling every last trick they can with heavily run ads and seemingly endless pockets. In a separate article by Christina Sarich on October the 1st, appearing on the naturalsociety.com website, Sarich writes that these corporations have repeatedly said that GMOs are safe, but if that were really the case, then they should have no qualms about labeling their food. Food companies and chemical companies say labeling foods will create hysteria and cause many consumers to quiver in fear of eating foods which contain GMOs, but that doesn't mean consumers should still be in the dark. These companies should be proving that these created ingredients are safe. But the truth is that they know genetically modified foods are showing up repeatedly in studies with links to cancer, infertility, gastrointestinal problems, birth defects, and even the altering of human DNA. There is no way they are going to label these foods. If they did, it would be an outright precedent to be sued later in U.S. courts for poisoning people across the nation. In Colorado, the initiative is called Proposition 105, and in Oregon, it is called Measure 92, and both are geared to get feedback from people as to whether or not biotech companies can continue to force dangerous GMO products upon people. It also does not look terribly promising for Monsanto to have the news revealed that company officials are selling some of their company stock holdings. Caitlin Keller, reporting for BizJournals.com on October 23rd, writes that the following purchases or sales of stock or exercises of options in St. Louis-based companies or companies with local subsidiaries have been reported to the Securities and Exchange Commission by officers, directors, and owners of more than 10% of the company's stock. These took place from October 13th to October 20th. Monsanto Company CEO Hugh Grant sold 90,000 shares on October 20th, valued at $112.38 per share, and now holds 268,871 shares. Robert Fraley, Chief Technology Officer, sold 10,679 shares on October 15th at $107.93 per share and now holds 99,758 shares. Nicole Ringenberg, officer, sold 2,500 shares on October 14th at $108.01 per share and now holds 9,339 shares. Stephen Mazzell, also an officer, sold 3,480 shares in October, valued at $106.08. Coming later in health, we'll be taking a look at the genetically modified labeling campaign and how people are often kept in the dark about companies that are allegedly supporting a healthy lifestyle, but are secretly supporting the GMO agenda. To ask most people in North America what comes to mind when they think of their prison system, most will picture buildings that are somewhat dark, with very unpleasant colors and full of angry, violent people who bully, rape, beat, and sometimes even kill from within. It is true that the North American model for prisons is not one that actively promotes healing and restorative justice, given the fact that an increasing number of prisons are being sold as for-profit institutions. One begins to understand why the percentage of people in jail in the U.S. is so high compared to other countries around the world. Of course, it is not in the best interests of the global cabal to rehabilitate prisoners or even care about their health or well-being. In order for them to maintain their power and control over humanity, the need has been to keep inmates in anger, fear, and violence so that those in the general public would continue to support an agenda of punishment, but also an agenda of fear and enslavement, even if they are not knowingly consenting to it. Prisons in Scandinavia are noted for being of a much higher standard and quality than North American prisons. The most logical reason for this would be the psychology of humanity as it is understood and experienced by each culture. This understanding and this experience reflects in the statistics when comparing North American facilities to Scandinavian facilities, but especially one facility in Norway, Halden Prison. An article appearing on the BusinessInsider.com website on October 28th by Christina Sturbans covers the story of a retired U.S. prison superintendent, James Conway. A 38-year veteran of the Attica Correctional Facility in New York, Conway spent none of his time feeling sorry in any way for those incarcerated there. The article quotes Conway as saying that it was your actions that put yourself here, referring to the prisoners. Conway adds, who cares how they feel? This opens up a very complicated and emotional issue for those who cannot see humanity from a larger, more awakened perspective. When we look at people in prison as animals and treat them as animals, it would stand to reason that they could never again come back to become productive contributors to a society. When we also realize that every human has contributed in at least some way to the societal conditions that drove many of the criminals to commit their crimes, we can begin to explore where the true accountability must be placed in order to begin healing and change. The North American model seeks only to judge, condemn, and punish. The Halden prison in Norway, in particular, seeks to help restore the humanity within the individual while helping to bring out qualities that will eventually make someone a productive contributor at some point in the future when the individual is released. The article quotes Conway as saying that he couldn't believe that he was in a prison because it was so luxurious compared to North America and his former facility. The facility is located in nature with mountains nearby. According to the article, the architect suggested that the prison keep as much of the nature as possible. That way, inmates could serve under normal conditions, one of the key principles in the Norwegian prison system. Conway's attitude also appears to be somewhat condescending, as though he was rejecting the idea that inmates deserved any kind of humane treatment, regardless of the crime. Inmates have fully equipped shared kitchens, tool rooms, and even a music production studio, which totally confused Conway. In an audio clip from a TV documentary program called The Norden, Conway comments on the music production facilities at Halden.
I've never seen anything like this anywhere inside a correctional facility. And I'm trying to get my head around what type of employment we are preparing an individual for in this kind of environment. I'm more used to teaching inmates or helping inmates get their graduate equivalency diploma, or teaching them woodworking or small engine repair or how to fix a TV or radio. This would appear we're preparing inmates for a career in music or music production.
Well, I can understand your questions, because this is probably the part of the facility that raises the most questions.
Really. I know that. Yeah.
This room is to a large extent used by the school as a part of the music teaching and education. Do we achieve less a crime? That's the interesting question down the road, really. So everyone is leaving Halden prison and other Norwegian prisons one day, and we have to focus on the life afterwards, actually.
I don't think you can go any higher. I don't think you can go any more liberal, other than giving the inmates the keys. That's the only thing I could see differently, would be, why don't you give them the keys then? And trust them not to go back to the street. If you put that much faith in them and that much of a luxurious environment for them to live in, but let them have the keys. Why have them in prison anyway?
The website addictinginfo.org also covered the story. In this article, Nathaniel Downs wrote on October 28th that Halden is on the cutting edge of rehabilitative corrections in Scandinavia. While skeptical, after meeting with former prisoners and seeing the numbers, Conway was less dismal and more in amazement, feeling that the cost would be too high to validate the system rather than it not working. But with a far lower criminal rate, the cost would be significantly lower, even if the per-prisoner cost were increased. Compare the United States pays on average $25,838 per year to house a prisoner, against Sweden's $43,000 per year, while the United States has over 10 prisoners for every single Swede in jail. By focusing on rehabilitation rather than punishment, the prison rates in Scandinavian nations continues to drop. As Bastøy prison governor Arne Nielsen told The Guardian, in law, being sent to prison is nothing to do with putting one in a terrible prison to suffer. The punishment is that you lose your freedom. If we treat people like animals when they are in prison, they are likely to behave like animals. Here we pay attention to you as human beings. By giving access to modern amenities, access to work training, and even musical education, prisoners leave corrections ready to enter society, not isolated from it. Much like military veterans unable to re-enter society after combat, we have turned prisons into a gigantic disorder factory. We take what were flawed human beings and turn them into criminals unable to function in society. In the show summary, there will be links to similar stories done by CNN, by the BBC, and also the London Daily Mail. Despite the coverage, however, nothing has changed within the UK and North America. That would be expected, however. There is no way for a for-profit system to exist, providing luxuries for thousands more people than are being held in Scandinavia. This is yet another issue that politicians must be held accountable to, for co-creating the conditions that do not heal, but only serve to profit others while perpetuating a societal condition that feeds fear, debt, and separation, and that also contributes to the enslavement of the general populations. In disclosure news this week, last week CVN played an audio clip from Paradigm Research Group, or PRG, founder Stephen Bassett, offering information about disclosure as it relates to his initiative to force the U.S. Congress to begin formal hearings on the disclosure of our galactic families through the revelations contained within what is called the Rockefeller Initiative. An article appearing on the New Earth Media website by JD also offers more information on this initiative, while also promoting a disclosure-related event scheduled to start next week. Before we get to that, there are no doubt many who will ask what this Rockefeller Initiative is. JD writes in his posting that, according to Bassett, this was a pushback in 1983 by billionaire Lawrence Rockefeller for disclosure of the ET presence to the public. Eventually, this led to the further Roswell investigation, which didn't really amount to anything being revealed to the American people once again. Both Hillary and Bill Clinton supported the initiative. JD reposts a letter from Stephen Bassett addressed to Hillary Clinton on April 30th, 2008 regarding this initiative. As you heard last week in Bassett's audio clip, this initiative puts a lot of pressure on Hillary Clinton, especially if she is seriously giving consideration to making a run for president again in 2016. Bassett also explained why the Republicans have not gone after the Clintons on this initiative. I would like to replay a portion of Bassett's comments from last week. I ask that you pay particular attention to his comments about Russian President Putin, because they will tie into the following story.
Jacked heavily up by the fact that the desk himself called for the release of UFO files in 2002-2003. The Clintons have been repeatedly connected to the ET issue through the Rockefeller Initiative and documents that are posted on 2 websites and other websites. The reason the Republicans have not tried to eviscerate Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and thus help to secure their positions, maybe even win the election of 2008, is because the Republicans know there's an ET presence just like you do. And I do. The Republicans at the high end are heavily connected to the military intelligence complex. That's their boys and girls over there. You don't think that generals, particularly those in the military intelligence people that have connections to the Republicans on the intelligence committee, haven't taken to lunch sometime and say, you know, the ET issue is real, don't you? They know it's real. So if they were to attack Hillary and Bill Clinton on the ET issue and try to destroy them because they're tinfoil hat-wearing believers, and Vladimir Putin the next week announced the ET presence was here, it would be a catastrophe. And so here is the problem that they have. Obama has a problem because if he doesn't get ahead of this, it could be another disaster for him if another head of state preempts the U.S. on disclosure, thus completely obliterating whatever little bit of legacy he had, wiping out the Democrats again, and God knows who gets to be president in 2016. Meanwhile, the Clintons have a dilemma, because if they don't get ahead of this, then her aspirations are go down the drain. If she doesn't come ahead of this issue and say yes, and speak to this and acknowledge it, then it will come out, and she's going to have to explain why she has been silent for 26 years and only got driven to speak by the powerful force of the net.
In the meantime, however, the pressure needs to be maintained on the U.S. Congress to push them into action. JD writes in his posting that there appears to be a powerful force that is pushing the disclosure initiative to the forefront, and on November 5th of next week, this could be a powerful game changer. Political fears are now prevalent to now just simply avoid the subject completely in the United States, where it was once thought to destroy the other party for wearing tinfoil hats for bringing up the notion of life outside our planet. Now the tides are turning. Starting next week, a call is being made by Bassett to launch a tweet and email storm on the U.S. Congress to force them into greater action regarding the issue of disclosure. According to an update from the PRG website, the Congressional Hearing Initiative, or CHI, will formally launch on November 5th. The DVDs will be shipped on November 1st. A substantial media blitz will begin on or about October 29th. A tweet or email storm will be directed from PRG's Facts on Washington website. PRG Executive Director Stephen Bassett will be lecturing across Europe during September and October and building support for this initiative that congressional tweets and emails can be sent from anywhere in the world. Approaches to the appropriate congressional committee members will begin on or around November 10th. The goal is to obtain a commitment to hold congressional hearings by January 3rd and actual hearings by January 31st. Key to the success of the most comprehensive effort ever to get full hearings for the scores of military, agency, and political witnesses ready to testify will be the amount of depth of the media coverage from November 1st to January 31st, particularly mainstream news talk shows. On a separate page, PRG announces the tweet or email campaign to bring the issue to full awareness of U.S. congressional members. According to this webpage, if congressional hearings are held, it is quite likely the truth embargo will collapse. Bassett believes a tweet and email storm can be effective, especially if it continues for at least 30 days with a heavy emphasis on the first 10 days. On that page, Bassett offers guidelines for the Congressional Hearing Initiative, or CHI, storm. The guidelines are to tweet or email as often as you can to as many members of Congress as possible. When you contact your own member, be sure to mention that you are a constituent. Keep emails very brief, respectful, and to the point. Don't repeat language. Mix it up to avoid it looking like a form letter. Focus on the 3 requests: to review the material of the citizen hearing on disclosure videos, to meet with Stephen Bassett, and also to make the call for hearings to discuss the ET presence engaging the human race. And also, if members have a Facebook page, make use of it. Bassett provides links to Twitter, Facebook, and also email addresses for each of the members of the Senate and for the House of Representatives. This information will be reproduced in the show summary for this story. Here is an opportunity for people around the world to send messages to U.S. congressional members to push the campaign and support the lobbying efforts of Bassett and PRG to bring this issue front and center as it now needs to be. CVN encourages any and all to dedicate even a little bit of time to send a few tweets or emails to help raise awareness. CVN has reported in the past how Russia appears to be taking the lead in terms of the global disclosure of the existence of our galactic families. As you heard moments ago, Stephen Bassett said it would be a catastrophe if the Republicans tried to bring down Hillary and Bill Clinton over the Rockefeller Initiative, especially if Vladimir Putin were to announce disclosure ahead of the U.S. Up to now, it has taken place without any major global announcements, but instead has come through quiet comments and revelations made here and there, with little bits of information being revealed. Arguably, the reason for this could be that Russia is telling the global cabal controlling the cover-up of ET disclosure that if they are not willing to do the disclosure themselves, then Russia is going to proceed on their own. It is my belief that this week Russia may have just pushed their soft disclosure to the next level, while also delivering another possible but subtle hint to the future of the geo-economic paradigm. For those who are not football or soccer fans, this story may have just passed you by without any interest. An Associated Press article appearing in the Toronto Star website on October 28th writes that FIFA President Sepp Blatter has revealed the logo for the 2018 World Cup in Russia with the help of a crew of cosmonauts. The logo depicts the World Cup trophy in red and blue, colors from the Russian flag with gold trim. Unveiling the logo on a Russian state TV talk show, Blatter said the logo would show Russia's heart and spirit. It was then presented over video link by a crew of 3 Russian cosmonauts on the International Space Station. The following is a video that appeared in the article.
Ta-da! The official emblem for the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia is revealed. And of course, space was involved. Hey, it's Co-Am for Bus 60. 3 cosmonauts at the International Space Station introduced the tournament's logo with a dramatic countdown. The ISS presentation was complemented by an elaborate light projection at the historic Bolshoi Theater in Moscow, which is reminiscent of the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympic Games opening ceremony. The World Cup design is inspired by those delicate Fabergé eggs you wouldn't want to kick around, and it's getting a lot of reaction on Twitter. One fan likens the logo to a lucha libre mask. Another compares it to a shaving device. And this guy is thinking about an alien head. Alien head or not, I just can't get over how Elena's top knot bun is on point, even in 0 gravity. Plus 60, now you know. Pass it on.
The use of the cosmonauts might have been a strong disclosure hint by itself, suggesting that the 2018 event will be out of this world. As you just heard as well, a comment was even made that the logo looks like an ET. However, looking at the logo itself, you will see even more. Most people will see a soccer or a football at the top. Look closer. There are stars in blue where the black spots might be on a soccer ball. This suggests space. If you look even more closely, notice the shading between the blue and the black, giving the circles a more three-dimensional look. This seems to suggest something more 3D in space, such as a starship, or what might seem to be a clear dome on top of a starship. 3 starships suggests that there are many as opposed to only one, meaning many members of our galactic families are around Earth at this time. The little dots on each edge of each starship is a subtle detail, I believe, to emphasize a starship or a UFO design. The lower starship is being embraced by a human form. This seems to suggest that there are civilizations of human form that are on board these starships, and they are coming down to Earth. The circles at the base of the logo may be symbolic of UFOs that are currently being spotted around Earth. There appears to be something like an arrow, which may symbolize shooting for the stars. The stars that appear at the bottom of the logo seems to suggest that contact from the stars has already come down to Earth. The red color may symbolize that Russia is actively promoting and supporting this disclosure with our galactic families. On the left side of the base of the logo, there is a human form with arms outstretched with a star overhead, suggesting that perhaps humans are reaching for the stars and for contact, but perhaps more likely that they are embracing and welcoming contact from the stars and our galactic families. It is also possible that the year 2018 is a deadline year by which Russia expects full disclosure to have taken place and everything is fully underway to facilitate and disseminate all necessary information to the people of the planet, if not sooner. The gold framing is very likely a strong hint to the old financial order that the gold standard for international finance is now here, and that Russia is playing its role in making it happen. It represents the role that gold will be playing in supporting currencies in the new financial paradigm. This will ultimately bring the global changes that will fully allow disclosure to take place. Although I am personally no longer a big fan of commercialized sporting events, I have to admit that I love this logo, and I love it even more if it represents what I am seeing in the logo. The World Cup has traditionally united people around the world in a spirit of friendly and peaceful competition, but perhaps this logo can embrace something more, significantly more, for the benefit of humanity on a much higher level. The logo can be found online, but will also be posted in the show summary for listeners to view. In a late-breaking story developing on October 31st, it has been reported on RT.com that Spaceship Two, the smaller ship built by Virgin Galactic, has experienced what has been called an anomaly and crashed in the Mojave Desert. Spaceship Two is the smaller craft, the one that is carried up to the necessary altitude by Spaceship One before being released and igniting the engines that push the craft up to suborbital altitudes. Little information was available as of airtime, although reports are indicating that one pilot has been killed and that another is injured. There will no doubt be many trying to explore and search for connections linking the global cabal to the crash of this craft in order to prevent space tourism from taking off. CVN will keep an eye on the story to see if any significant developments are revealed with this story. In tech news for the week, we start with a story coming out of Austria that was reported on RT.com on October 29th, reporting that humanity is beginning to take its first steps into creating transportation that is usable both on the ground and in the air. Many North Americans will recall an old children's program called The Jetsons, which was about a futuristic family that had technologies which allegedly didn't exist at the time, although it appears that the technology did in fact exist, but just was not revealed to the general public. The idea of a family mode of flying transportation was featured in this children's program. We appear to be birthing the age of flying transportation for the general public. According to the article, the world's first production-ready flying car, which transforms from an automobile to a plane in just several seconds, has been unveiled to the public in Vienna, Austria by its Slovakian inventors. The presentation of Aeromobile 3.0 took place at the Pioneers Festival in the Austrian capital of Vienna on Wednesday. Aeromobile co-founder and CTO Stefan Klein had dedicated 25 years of his life to this project, starting out with prototypes built in a garage. According to Klein, now it's time that we can present the real concept. The article also reports the following. The Aeromobile 3.0 transforms from a car to a plane by unfolding its wings, which are located behind the cockpit, where the rear seats in an ordinary car would be. Developed in Slovakia, the compact vehicle is designed to be able to drive in road traffic and fit into a standard parking space. The flying car requires a paved or grass strip of around 250 meters to take off and just 50 meters to land. Powered by a Rotax 912 engine, it can reach speeds of 160 kilometers per hour on land and 200 kilometers per hour in the air. The Aeromobile 3.0 runs on standard automobile gasoline and can be refueled at any petrol station. The fuel consumption stands at 12.5 kilometers per liter while flying and 15 liters per hour while driving. As one may expect, it would be necessary to have a pilot's license to operate a car like this. The vehicle is equipped with all the safety features present in planes, including autopilot, avionics, and a parachute deployment system. Klein reports that the vehicle has already been successfully tested in the air, but he and his partners are holding back from taking orders just yet, saying that a standard production process still needs to be perfected. The estimated cost for the futuristic technology is expected to be less than that of a small plane, but more than a speedy sports car. The links and a video of the airborne demonstration will appear in the show's summary. As many regular listeners will know, but what is also unknown to the general public because of lack of media coverage, Asia has been taking the lead in terms of so many technologies and plans for making the world a better place. An article by Justin McGarr appearing on the Sourceable.net website on September 17th explores Singapore's new Green Building Master Plan. Singapore is rapidly moving forward to become a global leader in green buildings, and the Authority for Building and Construction in Singapore has now released its third Green Building Master Plan. According to McGarr, the third Green Building Master Plan maps out a holistic strategy for the next 5 to 10 years to accelerate the greening of existing buildings and bring us closer to achieving our target of 80% green buildings by 2030, said BCA Chief Executive Officer Dr. John Kung. Beyond focusing on the building infrastructure, we also want to get building owners, facility managers, tenants, and occupants to play a bigger role in the green building movement. Targeted at building owners and tenants that are small and medium enterprises, the scheme aims to incentivize these stakeholders with lesser resources to commence energy efficiency improvements to their buildings and premises. The scheme will co-fund up to 50% of the retrofitting cost for energy improvements, or up to $3 million for building owners and up to $20,000 for occupants and tenants. This is the Singaporean government's first targeted initiative in engaging the SME building owners and tenants to embark on environmental sustainability and improving energy efficiency standards of their buildings and premises. Building on the 2012 landmark legislation requiring existing buildings to submit building and energy-related information, the third Green Building Master Plan continues to address the need to monitor and sustain energy-efficient building performance. Nagar also notes that the Singaporean government has particularly been leading the green movement by driving and strengthening sustainability efforts within public sector buildings, providing guidelines around the adoption of resource efficiency measures covering energy efficiency, water efficiency, and recycling. The new master plan builds on this with a number of new requirements for the public sector, including regulations stating that buildings with more than 5,000 square meters of gross floor area will require Green Mark certification. When leases run out, public sector bodies must lease new office space in buildings with the high Green Mark ratings. Public sector offices at the next lease or retrofit must be certified under the Green Mark or for office interior scheme. Through the efforts of its first two Green Building Master Plans, BCA has successfully grown the number of green buildings in Singapore from just 17 in 2005 to more than 2,100 today. This is the equivalent of about 62 million square meters, or more than 25% of Singapore's total gross floor area. Another prime example where North America is being left further and further behind, and this illusion that things are better in the Western world are being shattered more and more as truth continues to be exposed in all industries and aspects of life. In health news now, we look at the continuing and growing awareness campaign to expose how people are tricked into supporting companies and products that they believe to be healthy or organic, but in fact the company policies seem to show otherwise. An article by Julie Wilson on October 30th, appearing on the naturalnews.com website, starts out by addressing an initiative in California called Proposition 37. The initiative, originally proposed in 2012, would have required the mandatory labeling of genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, in the state of California. Although the proposition failed, Wilson notes that it set the precedent for other U.S. states to pass similar legislation. Wilson writes that Proposition 37 failed because of illegal, unethical, and snake-like tactics carried out by the biotech industry, not because people didn't want it. Even though it failed, the people still won because it drew massive awareness and support to the issue of the right to know what's in our food. Since then, more than 60 bills in 20 states have introduced GMO labeling laws. 2 more states will be added to that list this year, with Colorado and Oregon considering measures to require GMO labeling. Voters in both states will get a chance to vote yes or no on this November's ballot, according to a report by PBS. The PBS article by Luke Runyon on October 8th notes that with a month left before the November 4th general election, voters in Colorado and Oregon are considering a measure requiring the labeling of foods containing genetically modified ingredients. Proponents of these laws say consumers have a right to know what's in their food. Opponents believe labeling laws will cause hardship for those who grow and sell genetically modified crops and derived products. It's a ballot issue inspiring strong emotion and large campaign donations from both camps. In today's hectic world, however, staying on top of what's healthy, what's not, who is supporting beneficial health, and who is not, often gets ignored. Wilson writes that while eating organic is essential for a healthy lifestyle, purchasing organic food from brands that support the right to know what's in your food is equally as important. Unfortunately for the consumer, keeping up with the brands that support GMO labeling isn't easy, especially when some of our favorite organic brands, such as Annie's, have been bought out by corporations that want nothing but to harm us with their toxic food products. Annie's was recently bought out by General Mills. Opposition to GMO labeling is spearheaded by Monsanto, a company that relies on misleading you about the presence of GMOs in their products. DuPont, Dow, and the Grocery Manufacturers Association, a national business lobbying association, accompany them in their plight to hide the presence of GMOs from their consumers. Wilson's article notes several companies that she feels are pro-GMO labeling brands and also several companies that are secretly funding the anti-GMO labeling laws. Among the companies that are secretly against GMO labeling, she identifies Horizon Organic, Silk, Ocean Spray, Sweet Leaf Tea, Naked, Santa Cruz Organic, and Kashi. Among the companies supporting GMO labeling, she identifies Nature's Path, Bob's Red Mill, Amy's, Applegate, Organically Grown Company, Nativa, Cliff Bar, So Delicious, Lundberg Family Farms, and Back to Nature, among many others. According to Mark Kastel, co-director of the Cornucopia Institute, a farm policy research group, he says that many consumers will likely be surprised to learn that owners and management of some of their favorite organic and natural brands are fighting against the right of consumers to know what is in their food. We want to spotlight this issue so that consumers can vote in the marketplace for manufacturers and brands that reflect their personal values. The Cornucopia Institute has published a list of companies for and against GMO labeling. For CVN listeners in Colorado and Oregon, you may wish to pay particular attention to this story as your opportunity to vote comes up next week on November the 5th or 4th. Another website, nongmoproject.org, has posted a webpage dedicated to frequently asked questions about GMOs that may be meaningful for you to visit, to learn more, and to perhaps share with those around you. The safety of GMO products is often the greatest concern. When asking questions, it may be meaningful to keep in mind that any product or service has the potential to be safe and healthy for people and for our planet, so long as the product or service is offered by those who truly care about humanity and our planet. When these products and services are controlled by corporations whose bottom lines depend upon profit, this begins to raise serious questions as to whether or not the true interests of humanity and our planet are being considered. A link to this list and also to other sources of information to help you in your own discernment of this story will appear in the show summary. By way of a short announcement this week, I would like to make a gentle request of the listeners who are able to do so to perhaps consider offering a donation to continue supporting the work of CVN. I would prefer not to make requests during the newscast, but I still receive messages from people who ask me if it's possible to donate because they have not seen the locations on the website that allow angels to make donations. Maybe it is my own fault because I have not made the donations button more visible. I know other sources are very vocal and they push donations with their viewers or their readers. In the past, I have chosen to more quietly advertise donations because I have not wanted people to feel guilty about supporting this work. I believe that I have demonstrated my commitment and my service to humanity, our planet, and our benevolent galactic families over the years. CVN has been on air, and also with my work associated with A Green Print for Life. My commitment to global change, peace, and the disclosure of our galactic families means more to me than any salary from any company. I am committed to helping co-create a better future for the children of our planet so that they can grow up free of debt, fear, and enslavement to a system that commercializes them while destroying their planet for profit, power, and greed. If it is within your means to do so, and only if it is, I would gently like to ask if you might be willing to keep CVN in your mind as you decide which sources you might choose to support this upcoming holiday season. If you are willing to do at least this, then I express my profound gratitude and appreciation for your consideration. It would mean so much to be able to continue this service to you all without having to take another job that may cut back on the hours I can dedicate to CVN. A donation can take many forms and does not necessarily require a financial contribution, although this would be the most immediate help. Perhaps you can donate frequent flyer or hotel points, or you can simply help promote CVN to other people, or perhaps recommend me to any media people who may need voiceover work for videos, commercials, or promotions. Maybe you have a suggestion for a product or service that you are willing to share or provide. I am willing to consider whatever comes from one's heart. A banner has been posted on this week's show summary and will continue to appear through to the end of the holiday season or until alleged global geoeconomic changes unfold for the benefit of all humans. However you may feel called to serve, dear listeners, please know how grateful I am for the assistance. I send blessings on all levels to each of you for sharing your precious time with CVN and also with me. So that is the unfolding consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is a part of the Enlight radio group of programs. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary on the blog at cosmicvisionnews.com, on the CVN Facebook page, also on Twitter, Google+, FaceUni, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, gently reminding you to beware of destination addiction, a preoccupation with the idea that happiness is in the next place, the next job, and with the next partner. Until you give up the idea that happiness is somewhere else, it will never be where you are. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is looking a bit like a FIFA soccer ball, but it is also unfolding all around you. Namaste.